I'm Carson Horn, and it's time for another edition of Talkin Tumors, where I break down the latest happenings in Auburn athletics. Let's get rolling. I certainly hope it is not as hot in Waco, Texas come August 29th as it is today in Auburn, Alabama. Wow. It's hot outside, but thankfully it is cool inside the studios here at Auburn University, inside the Weagle Studios, as this is another edition of Talkin Tumors. I am Carson Horn. We've got a super big show planned today. Got a lot of topics to get into, a lot of fun topics. We've got some controversy yet again to address. I have to go back on something I talked about last week and admit that I was wrong, which if my parents are watching or listening, I know they're going to enjoy me saying that, because if you know anything about me, that's really hard for me to do. But I'm going to try to do that on today's show, because I do think I was wrong about something on last week's episode. We're going to dive into ranking Auburn's schedule this year by the toughest to the easiest games. Not the easiest thing in the world to do. I'm sure there will be some disagreement on how I rank things, but that's how it should go. Also going to do another ranking on ranking the top moments from the 2024-2025 athletic year for Auburn athletics. There were a lot of really good moments this year. We graded Auburn athletics season on last week's episodes. This week we'll go through some of the top moments in my eyes from this past year. We'll talk about Missouri, continuing our all-season opponent preview, break down the Tigers and what that game could look like this year for Auburn. And then I took a trip to Philadelphia this past weekend. If you follow me on social media, I posted about that there. That was part of my graduation trip. My dad and I took that trip. I'll talk more about that at the end, but I'm going to address a question about how Philly fans relate to Auburn fans. I got that question a couple times in Philadelphia, and I thought, well, many Auburn fans might wonder the same. So I'll talk about that at the end of the show, but let's get into it today on this. We are now June 23rd. Cannot believe it. The summer continuing to roll by. We'll have, I think, one more episode in June before we roll on to July. So you're probably listening to this episode a little bit later on. I'm recording this on Monday. I don't think it'll be up until either Tuesday or Wednesday, and it's June 23rd when I'm recording this episode, so it could be our last episode in June. We might have one more before we'll be into July, and then before you know it, it will be Auburn football season. And that is where we're going to start today's show, ranking the Auburn football schedule for this season. I'm going to start from easiest and go to hardest on here. So Auburn plays 12 regular season games, plays 8 SEC games, 4 non-conference games. Of course, we know Auburn has one big non-conference game. That is the Baylor game. But at number 12, I'm putting Ball State. I believe this is the second game of the season for Auburn. It should be the easiest game of the season. Ball State has never been great. Auburn has played them plenty of times in the past. Not much more to say there. I have Ball State at number 12. At number 11, I have Mercer. If you remember a couple years ago during the Brian Harsin era and Gus Malzahn era, I believe even it was, Mercer has given Auburn some closer games than you would like if you're an Auburn fan. So I'll put Mercer at number 11, a little bit tougher opponent than Ball State. Mercer certainly has the ability. Mercer should not be a close game. However, Mercer in the past has given Auburn some issues, but we'll see if they can do that again this season. At number 10, I put South Alabama. Now, South Alabama, they could make this interesting. This could be a dangerous game for Auburn. This is the third game of the season. This is an 11:45 a.m. kickoff. This is a homecoming game for Auburn as well. South Alabama lost their quarterback, Gio Lopez, in the transfer portal. He went to North Carolina. That was a massive loss for South Alabama. It was even a bigger loss because it came in the spring portal. Gio Lopez had stayed through the winter portal. Then Bill Belichick goes to North Carolina. He ends up bringing Lopez in. Of course, great opportunity for Gio Lopez, but that's a big loss for South Alabama. They also lost their running back, Fluff Bothwell, who was a very good player. I thought at one point that he had a chance to maybe come to Auburn. He didn't, but South Alabama lost him as well. So those were their two best offensive players from last season, you could argue. And they're both gone. They're still talented players on this South Alabama roster. They'll still have the chance to once again compete in the Sun Belt. Major Applewhite has coached at a high level. He is a really good coach still in my mind. I know he had not had the the most success at the Power 5 level, but I think he's done well so far at South Alabama. So this could be a dangerous game for Auburn. It shouldn't be, but again, operative word there, should. So South Alabama I have at number 10. At number 9, this is the first SEC game I have on the list, is Arkansas. I don't expect Arkansas to be very good this year. I do like some of their pieces. I think Bobby Petrino is still a really good offensive coordinator. I think Talon Green is a really good quarterback. I just do not believe they have enough to be a high-level team in the SEC. I think they have a really tough schedule yet again. This might be the last year for Sam Pittman. We'll talk about Arkansas a little bit more when we get to the opponent preview of them. But I'm not super high on Arkansas, so I'm putting them at 9. I think this will be the easiest SEC game that Auburn has. Auburn plays host to Arkansas as well. Don't have to travel to Fayetteville. Auburn gets Arkansas at home. So at number 9, I'm putting Arkansas. At number 8, I'm putting Kentucky. I have a few more question marks about Kentucky. Things didn't go well for the Wildcats last season. Mark Stoops and the Kentucky fan base, they're always going back and forth whether he's in their good graces or not. But they brought in Zach Calzada, former Auburn quarterback that never played it down for Auburn, but he's there. He had a really good year last year at Incarnate Word. Can they find some lightning in a bottle? They tend to do that from time to time. They're usually consistently around 8 wins. Last year was a bit of an anomaly for them under Mark Stoops. Can they get back on track? Possibly, but this should be an easier game for Auburn. Auburn gets this game at home, and Auburn should win this game. At number 7, I'm putting Vanderbilt. Now, you might argue Vanderbilt should be higher up on this list. And I wouldn't push back too much, but I thought 7 was appropriate for Vanderbilt. Diego Pavia is back. Auburn will have to travel to Nashville this season. Hugh Freeze trying to find a way to break the curse of Diego Pavia. And Diego Pavia has owned Hugh Freeze over the last several years, dating back to Hugh Freeze's time at Liberty and Diego Pavia's time at New Mexico State. Can Auburn finally break that curse this year and win at Vanderbilt, which, as we found out last year, Alabama even went to Nashville and lost to Vanderbilt. Higher expectations, though. Vanderbilt's not going to fly under the radar this season like they did last season. There will be more focus and attention on that team. And certainly, there's not going to be a lack of confidence from Diego Pavia. He is certainly a confident player. We've seen that over and over again, even this offseason, talking trash to Tennessee, among others. He'll be ready for this Auburn game, and Auburn should be ready for Vanderbilt. So I have Vanderbilt at number 7 on the ranking, the Auburn schedule. At number 6, I put Missouri. I'll talk more about them in a second today, but I think this could be a challenging game at home for Auburn. Auburn hosts Missouri this season. I'll break them down here in just a few minutes. At number 5, I put Baylor. I already discussed Baylor in the preview, opponent preview earlier, and a few weeks ago on the show. I almost should have gone higher with this game. I debated going higher, but I ended up putting this game at number 5 for the toughest games of the season for Auburn. Having to go to Waco, Texas, first week of the season, Baylor being a veteran team, having a returning quarterback in Sawyer Robertson, Auburn playing the first game of the year with Jackson Arnold. While he has experience, it didn't come at Auburn. While this Auburn team has more experience than it did last season, it's still going to be young. There's still going to be plenty of question marks. I have less question marks about Baylor. Tough game. Really tough game. If this game was at home, I would feel differently about it, I think. I don't love it because of this game being on the road and because of the returning production for Baylor versus the returning production for Auburn. Auburn, talent-wise, is still going to have the more talented roster, but will that be enough to make up for the experience that Baylor has? We'll find out come August 29th. At number 4, I put Oklahoma. These 3 games, these 3 road games that I have listed at 5, 4, and 3 are the ones that you could really go in any order, and I wouldn't argue too much with you. But I put Oklahoma at 4 because I'm high on this Oklahoma team this season. I really like John Mateer. I think he's going to be an outstanding quarterback for Oklahoma. If you don't remember who that is, he was the transfer quarterback from Washington State, the number 1 transfer quarterback in the portal in last year's cycle. Really good player. How does that translate to Oklahoma? How does that translate to the SEC? The offensive coordinator from Washington State also came with him. I think it's going to translate well. And if that offense improves and then their defense stays at the level it was last season, you're talking about a team that is good enough, and I don't think this is a step too far, good enough to compete for the SEC. Because of their schedule this season, I doubt they will, but the talent roster is there for them if they can improve dramatically offensively from where they were last season. I think that's certainly possible with John Mateer. This is going to be a really challenging game for Auburn. Of course, you have Jackson Arnold returning to Norman, Oklahoma, which will add to the storylines in this game. I think this will be a really fun game to watch, but certainly a challenging game for Auburn. I'm excited to see Auburn in Norman, Oklahoma. This is the first time Auburn will travel to Oklahoma, as Oklahoma been a part of the SEC now. This will be the first time Auburn goes out there, so looking forward to that. At number 3, I put Texas A&M, and that's because I'm a touch higher on A&M than Oklahoma. I like Oklahoma this season, but I really like Texas A&M this season. I'm really high on Marcel Reed. I know Auburn beat Texas A&M last season at home, but A&M is going to get things corrected on defense. I really do believe that. I just don't believe Mike Elko is going to allow his defense to be as bad as it was last season. I fully expect improvement there. And then another year with Marcel Reed being the quarterback this season for the whole year. No question marks, no battle. This is his offense. This is his team. I think he'll take a step up. I think he'll improve as a quarterback. Their running back room is really, really good. And then we know their talent roster is one of the best in the country. College Station is an extremely difficult place to play as well. So I have A&M at number 3. I do believe this will be Auburn's toughest road game. This is the last road game I have listed, and Texas A&M is at number 3. So those 3 road games, you could put them in any order. I went Baylor at 5, Oklahoma 4, and then at Texas A&M at number 3. But I would not argue too much with you if you wanted to shift that order up a little bit. And at number 2, I have 2 home games here for these final 2 games, yet I still believe they are the toughest 2 games for Auburn for the reasons I'll lay out here. Number 2, Alabama, the Iron Bowl. Auburn hosts the Iron Bowl again this season. 2 years ago, Auburn had as good of a chance as ever to knock off Alabama. Alabama has what they now term the grave digger, good grief, grave digger play. And Alabama ends up winning the Iron Bowl in an extremely painful fashion for Auburn. Auburn last year competed in the Iron Bowl in Tuscaloosa, wasn't able to come out with the victory. Now Auburn will host Alabama again this year. The talent roster is as close to each other as it's been in I don't know how many years, if ever, since Nick Saban. That as far as the talent rosters go, Auburn is as close to Alabama as they have been. I would even argue maybe even more so than they were in the Gus Malzahn era, and Auburn was able to win multiple Iron Bowls during that time. So I think this is a great opportunity this year for Auburn to knock off Alabama, but can they do it? It's still difficult to get over that hump. Auburn has not won the Iron Bowl since 2019. Big opportunity this year, but I do think it's still going to be extremely difficult, even though it is at home. So I have Alabama at number 2, and then at number 1, I put the Georgia game. I just think Georgia's I give them a slight nod over Alabama. I'm not super confident in Georgia this year by Georgia standards. They're still going to be really good. They get graded on a scale, and I discussed them on last week's show when I did my opponent preview on Georgia, but I still give them a slight nod above Alabama because of the respect that I give to Kirby Smart and giving them the benefit of the doubt that they might even be better than I'm anticipating this year. And for the fact that Auburn just historically has been really, really bad against Georgia, dating back to, Auburn hasn't had a lot of success against Alabama, but it's had even less success against Georgia over the last 20-plus years. So that's another reason that I bumped Georgia above Alabama to the number 1 for the toughest game for Auburn this season. You also have Auburn coming off of 2 straight road games. Yes, have the bye in there before the Georgia game. But this could be a tough, it will be a tough matchup for Auburn as always. It is a night game, which should benefit Auburn, but I'm still going with the Georgia game at number 1 as Auburn's toughest game this season. So that was a fun list to put together. Your list might be a little bit slightly different. You can move around and put Alabama at 1, even if you wanted to put A&M or Oklahoma at 1 because those games are on the road. I would certainly understand that argument as well, but I thought the 2 rivalry games, because of the quality opponents and because of the history of the rivalries, those 2 games should be 1 and 2, even though they are at home this season. So that is my list for ranking the games in order of difficulty this year for Auburn. Moving on now, as I reach for my phone here as you're watching on podcast, as I want to grab this quote from Bruce Pearl on hiring for Auburn basketball. Auburn basketball announced this hire last week, official hire. Auburn hired a GM for the basketball program, Matt Gattens, I believe is how you pronounce it. I apologize if I mispronounced it. I believe that is correct. He is joining Auburn's staff from Iowa. He's been an assistant at Iowa. He was previously at Auburn under Bruce Pearl from 2016 through 2018, but now he is returning to be the general manager for Auburn basketball. Let me read Bruce Pearl's quote, and then I'll add some comments. Bruce Pearl said, quote, "The key to my success has been surrounding our program with good people. I've known Matt since the day he was born, as his parents were friends of mine when I was an assistant at Iowa. Matt's first job after his professional playing career was as a graduate assistant here at Auburn. He went off to do great things as an assistant coach and put himself in a position to be potentially named Iowa's head coach last year. It's great to have Matt and his family back in Auburn. It was important for me to have someone who had strong experience in understanding the challenges of name, image, and likeness. I also wanted someone who could help us not only be the best we can be in NIL, but also with managing player and roster development." I really think this is an important hire for Auburn basketball. I see this hire similar to the hire of Will Redmond, I believe it was over a year ago now, for Auburn football. GMs are necessary in major college athletics now, just like we see in professional sports. They're needed in football, they're needed in basketball. You can maybe even argue they are needed in college baseball as well. Having to manage the roster, having to manage the money is too much for a head coach to have to do, on top of doing your normal coaching duties and doing your normal fundraising duties. There is so much on a head coach's plate. His ability to actually coach the game, it has almost gone extinct. And Bruce Pearl is 65 years old now. He wants to be able to coach the game. He doesn't want to have to worry about what Todd Pettiford or Keyshawn Hall needs to make, or what adjustments we need to make to their contract, or what do we need to do to make sure we get Abdul Bashir back for year 2, so forth and so on. Those are the type of hypothetical things that a GM could be dealing with during the season that Bruce Pearl and his staff don't need to have to worry about. Well, Matt Gattens coming in will be able to deal with that. He'll also work in evaluating recruits as well, but handling the money, handling these NIL deals, especially now that the money is underneath the purview of the university. This is a big deal. It helped Auburn football in recruiting, especially in the transfer portal, where you have to evaluate very quickly. And I think Auburn basketball has done a really good job, despite not having someone in this role like they're about to now. But I think Auburn could be even better in evaluating talent and figuring out how to disperse the resources appropriately with Matt Gattens. And then you add in the familiarity. Bruce Pearl mentioned it in his quote there. He's known Matt Gattens for a long time, been familiar, been friends with him for a long time. He's been on Auburn's staff before. That matters. Bruce Pearl's comfortable with him. He's going to understand how he works, and that certainly adds to what is already a very close Auburn staff. Auburn lost Chad Pruitt this season. We talked about on last week's show, moving to a role into full-time ministry, leaving the staff. But Auburn and Bruce Pearl have had very little staff turnover over the last several years, and I think that's a big reason Auburn has had as much success as it has had over the last several years. You added Corey Williams a couple years ago to the staff, replacing Wes Flanagan, but you didn't have any staff turnover in the previous 2 seasons. Now Ian Borders got promoted from within, so this was the first outside hire Auburn's made since they brought in Corey Williams, and I think it's a really good one. And I'm excited to see what he can do to help Auburn basketball continue to be the best it can be. Look, you're not trying to go up a big level. Auburn is already elite in basketball now, just trying to take another step or two up to make your program run even more smoothly operationally, and I think Matt Gattens will certainly help with that. Staying on that topic, I wanted to address Bruce Pearl's future. What does the future look like for Bruce Pearl? He is now 65 years old. He said forever. He doesn't want to coach forever. I think he wants to have a little bit of a life after coaching. So what are Auburn fans to expect from Bruce Pearl? I don't think anyone can know. I don't even know if Bruce Pearl knows. He did say in an interview shortly after this past season that he feels re-energized, that he was worn down 2 years ago when Auburn lost in the upset game to Yale in the round of 64. but he feels more energized now after this past season, despite the season going longer. I think success will do that to you. I think success can be motivating, especially when you come so close to a national championship like Auburn has, like Auburn did in 2019, like Auburn did this past season. It can add a little more fuel to the fire. Feeling that excitement, that joy of winning also can re-energize you. It's like, well, this is really fun. I want to have that feeling again versus the feeling of disappointment, although 2 years ago was certainly not a disappointing season, had a very disappointing ending. That can wear you down a little bit. Sometimes the team, the roster that you're coaching, if the players wear on you, if they wear you out, that can wear you down. I'm just speculating on possible reasons that Bruce Pearl may feel the way that he does. But we know he's the ultimate competitor, and it's never easy for a competitor to walk away from what they love doing and what they've done their whole life. And for Bruce Pearl, that has been coaching basketball and doing it at an elite level. So it's going to be hard for him to walk away, and he's still doing it. He's still coaching at an elite level. He has no reason to walk away. Sometimes coaches need to walk away at the end of their careers because they're starting to struggle. They're starting to lose their touch. Bruce Pearl doesn't seem to be anywhere near that. He has his touch. He has adapted. He has evolved as a coach. He's evolved offensively. We've seen that he's brought in fresh ideas, and a lot of coaches his age wouldn't be willing to do that. He's been able to adapt to the NIL era. We saw multiple older coaches retire because they didn't want to deal with it. Certainly understandable. That wasn't Bruce Pearl, and I respect that out of him. And if you're asking, well, what reason does he still have to keep coaching? Besides being a competitor, besides wanting to continue to try to win a national championship and compete for championships, there's not really any. His legacy is cemented. No matter what happens the rest of his tenure at Auburn, Bruce Pearl is going to go down as one of the best coaches in all of Auburn athletics history. He is the best coach in Auburn basketball history. That's not debatable. We've had the debate previously on this show about whether or not he is the best coach in all of Auburn athletics history. We can continue to have that debate. But his legacy is cemented. He is absolutely phenomenal. And what he has done for Auburn, it extends past basketball. He has done so much for the Auburn community, and that is also going to be a major part of his legacy. He is beloved by this community, and he has done so much for Auburn. And I know he is grateful for what Auburn has done for him, giving him that second chance after the Tennessee and the NCAA scandal. So Bruce Pearl, I hope he continues to coach for many more years. I don't expect that to be the case. I don't know how much longer. I think he's taking it year by year. I think for Auburn fans, it's just enjoy the moment. Live in the moment. Take it year by year. We know he's going to be here for next season. Enjoy that. I know there were the news reports that he might run for Senate. I don't think that is happening. I fully expect Bruce Pearl to continue coaching Auburn basketball, and then we'll see where it goes from after this next season. Again, take it a year at a time, and we'll see how Bruce Pearl feels, and of course, whatever he ends up deciding to do over the next several years, if he continues to coach for 5 more, or if it's just 1 more, I know Auburn fans will be supportive of that either way. But we are close enough now that we can begin to look at, well, what might the future look like past Bruce Pearl? I fully expect Stephen Pearl to be the next head coach after Bruce Pearl. I wrote a column on this a year and a half or so ago, arguing for Bruce Pearl to be named the head coach in waiting. Auburn has not officially made that announcement. Stephen Pearl is the assistant head coach, I believe now that is a part of his title, but he has not been named the head coach in waiting. That has been done at other programs. Houston, for instance, Kelvin Sampson's son, who is the head coach at Houston, Kelvin Sampson is. His son is an assistant on the staff. He has been named head coach in waiting by Houston. I would support that at Auburn. I understand the pushback and not wanting to lock yourself into something and then some instant occur where you have to get out of that. I understand not wanting to tie yourself down if you're John Cohen, if you're Auburn. But Bruce Pearl deserves whatever he wants at this point, and I know that he would love to have Stephen Pearl as head coach in waiting, have that in a contract, have that publicly announced. That hasn't happened. I fully believe it should be because Bruce Pearl should get, as I just mentioned, whatever he wants. And if he wants that should be out there, and Stephen Pearl should be head coach in waiting. But even if you don't believe in just giving the head coaching job to someone just because he's Bruce Pearl's son, I can make the argument that Stephen Pearl is more than worthy of it based on his own merits, not just because he is Bruce Pearl's son. Stephen Pearl is an excellent basketball coach, and if you were to ask him why he should be the next Auburn head coach, I believe he would lay out many of the reasons that I will, and it would have nothing to do with him being Bruce Pearl's son. It would have to do with his accolades and his success as an assistant separate from being Bruce Pearl's son. He's a strong recruiter. If you look at some of Auburn's biggest additions in the transfer portal over the years, like Walker Kessler, Jabari Smith, Denver Jones, Chaney Johnson, just to name a few, Stephen Pearl helped lead up those recruitments. He helped lead up some of the recruitments of guys that Auburn brought in this past season. Wendell Green Jr. Stephen Pearl has taken the lead on most of Auburn's transfer portal additions, and we know those guys at Janai Broome. Goodness, how did I forget that? Those guys have played a major role in the success of Auburn basketball, and Stephen Pearl led the way in landing those guys. He's also an incredible basketball coach. He's the defensive coordinator for Auburn basketball. He plays a masterful role in Auburn's defensive game plans in a defense that was top 10 in efficiency again this season. He knows how to dial up a game plan. He knows how to put Auburn's players in position to succeed and to be successful. And then finally, he's also a great motivator. He relates to the players. The players have strong opinions of him, meaning that they really, really like him a lot. Many players are very close to him, and he's well liked in the locker room based on everything that we can tell from the outside looking in. And then finally, this is related to Bruce Pearl. It does keep Bruce Pearl around. If Stephen Pearl's the head coach of Auburn, Bruce Pearl's not going anywhere. He's going to be there supporting his son. He's still going to be out in the Auburn community. If Stephen is to leave Auburn after Bruce Pearl retires and he goes elsewhere, then more than likely Bruce Pearl's going to be going elsewhere to support his son and going to be cheering for him at games where he could be coaching elsewhere at a high program, and Bruce Pearl could be cheering for that university instead of Auburn. I don't think anyone wants that. I don't think anyone wants Bruce Pearl to ever leave Auburn. And if Stephen Pearl is the next head coach for Auburn, that won't happen. Bruce Pearl will be here supporting his son and still being a major part as an ambassador for the university, which I think would be fantastic. I understand the negatives. I understand the possible pushbacks. Well, what if it doesn't go well? Well, there's no guarantee that Stephen Pearl will be successful. I certainly believe he will be, but you don't have a guarantee, just like you wouldn't have a guarantee for any coach that you hire. So, yes, is there risk? Sure. But I think the reward greatly outweighs the risk, and I fully believe Stephen Pearl should be named head coach in waiting, and go ahead and cement your future and what that's going to look like for this Auburn basketball program past the Bruce Pearl era. Okay, continuing on now to our Missouri preview for this upcoming season. Auburn will face Missouri it'll be Game 7. I think Auburn has a bye, at least one bye before this Missouri game. This will be the 7th game of the season for Auburn. Missouri went 10-3 last season. Really, really fantastic year for Eli Drinkwitz in this Missouri program. Eli Drinkwitz is entering his 6th season as the Missouri head coach. It's been an up and down tenure. It started out a little rocky. He was on the hot seat just a couple of years ago, and he has really turned it on and figured it out at Missouri. They've recruited at a really good level for Missouri. Missouri's not a place that necessarily attracts extremely highly rated players, but they've done really well, staying around 20 in high school recruiting rankings. And then they had a really good transfer portal class this past year, top 5 portal class. And this season, they should be set up to be really successful again. They have one of the easier schedules in the SEC this upcoming season. So coming off a 10-3 season, they do have to replace Brady Cook, their star quarterback, who led an incredible comeback last season against Auburn in this Auburn-Missouri game when Auburn traveled to Columbia, Missouri. Auburn led this game 17-6, I believe it was. Brady Cook is injured. Auburn looks like they might run away with this game. Brady Cook goes to the hospital, comes back, and leads Missouri to a victory over Auburn. Incredible story if you're a fan of college football and a Missouri fan. Not so incredible if you are an Auburn fan, as that was another painful loss out of 7 really painful losses for Auburn last season. Brady Cook is gone. Luther Burden is gone. Theo Weiss is gone. They're losing a lot of talented players on the offensive side of the ball. So that's the question mark. Is their schedule easier? I believe it is. I believe it's a fairly easy schedule by SEC standards. That should help them have success, but they have major question marks. At quarterback, they brought in Bo Pribula. He was the backup quarterback at Penn State. Really athletic guy, but some question marks as far as his passing goes. He can run the ball well, like Brady Cook, probably even more athletic than Brady Cook was, but how will he throw the ball? How will their passing game look, having to replace Luther Burden and Theo Weiss, as I mentioned? That's the question mark offensively, but I do think they're going to run the ball at a really high level. They also brought in one of the top transfer portal running backs in Ahmad Hardy from Louisiana Monroe, who Auburn faced last season when the Tigers faced off against Louisiana Monroe. They brought in him, so I think their running game will be really good. I have more questions offensively in their passing game. Defensively, this is a topic that I think is getting not enough attention, and I'm sure it probably will at SEC Media Days coming up in July, but Missouri's defensive line could be one of the best in the SEC this year. They have 3 seniors returning. All 3 are talented players that were really good last season. They bring those 3 guys back, and they can have a really strong defensive line that could give many offensive lines in the SEC issues this season, including Auburn's. So how will this game look? This game is a home game in the flex window, so that means it could be afternoon or night for Auburn. As I mentioned, it's in the back half of the season. This is after the Georgia game, though. Auburn will not have a bye before this game. It'll be directly after the Georgia game. How beat up, how worn down is Auburn from what will have been a night game, a massive rivalry game? What if Auburn wins that Georgia game? This will be a game that could be a massive letdown spot for Auburn if that's the case. Or if Auburn's coming off a loss to Georgia, how does this Auburn team respond? That'll be, of course, a storyline there. If that's the case, this is a game, though, that Auburn needs to win this year. This is a game at home against a team that you're going to have the more talented roster than. Auburn should not lose this game. And if Auburn does lose this game, that probably tells you the way the season has either gone to this point or the way the season will go the rest of the way. Because if Auburn wants to achieve its goals this season by having a solid year, having an 8 or 9 win season, Auburn has to win this game against Missouri in the 7th game of the year. I think Auburn, looking at it now, if I were predicting the schedule now, I do think this is a game Auburn will win. There are major question marks for Missouri, but Eli Drinkwitz is a really good head coach, and I think you'll have this Missouri team once again being a sneaky contender in the SEC. Moving on now to ranking the top moments from this past athletic year for Auburn. There were a lot of moments to go through. I have a couple honorable mentions that I'll throw in there, but I wanted to go through a top five moments from the Auburn athletic season this past year, starting at number 5. I have this one. There's a lot of Auburn basketball in here, so I'll just go ahead and, fair warning, a lot of Auburn basketball. That was because Auburn basketball had an incredible historical season. We know Auburn football didn't have the best season. We went through the grades last week. I don't have to repeat all that. So, just giving you a fair warning. So, at number 5, I have Auburn beating Kentucky and then winning the SEC outright later that day when Tennessee upset Alabama. Well, not upset. Had the half-court heave from Meshack to beat Alabama to win that game. When Tennessee beat Alabama, Auburn secured the SEC outright. That was a great day. A really, really great day for Auburn. I was in Lexington, Kentucky for that game. Auburn broke the 30-whatever-year streak it was against Kentucky. Auburn had not won in Rupp in over 30 years. Miles Kelly, which just went off and was insane, completely insane in that game, shut down Rupp Arena. I mean, Rupp Arena never was able to the crowd was never able to get into that game. Auburn just dominated from start to finish over the Wildcats. It was incredible to see in person. I'll never forget that. Thankful for that memory, getting to go to Lexington and get to watch that game, get to cover that game. Was a great memory for me personally, and it was really, really cool to see Auburn then get to celebrate back in Auburn while I was still in Lexington. I did not get to travel back with the team, obviously, but getting to see them celebrate Tennessee beating Alabama on the Tiger Transits. They were heading to Toomers, celebrate winning the SEC title. That was a great day in Auburn athletics this year. At number 4, I put the Auburn win over Texas A&M in football. This was the best moment from the Auburn football season last year in what was a down year. This this was a moment, if Auburn football turns around this year, this will be a moment we'll come back to and we'll circle. Is this the turning point for Auburn football under Hugh Freeze to get the program headed back in the right direction? I don't know. We don't know that yet, but we do know it was a really good moment and the best moment from the Auburn football season last year. The field storming, the plays that were made in that game by a number of Auburn players, the overtime. It was a classic football game, and had everything in it, from thinking you're about to win it to thinking you're about to lose it. All the emotion, the emotional roller coaster that you go on as a player and as a fan. It had all of that. Just a quintessential college football game, and it was a super fun one for Auburn football. At number 3, another Auburn basketball one. This is Auburn basketball beating Alabama in Tuscaloosa. This was a big deal. We know Auburn would later lose to Alabama at home, but they did get this win in Tuscaloosa. And really, to me, as a player and as a fan, I honestly enjoy teams winning on the road more than at home. It's fun to see the home team, home fans leave sad and disappointed. And Auburn won that game in Alabama and controlled it most of the way. And I think that's what made it even a bigger victory. And don't forget this. At the time, these were the number 1 and number 2 teams in the country. This was the biggest matchup in Auburn and Alabama basketball history. Biggest moment in Iron Bowl of basketball history. Number 1 Auburn versus number 2 Alabama. And Auburn proved they were the number 1 team in the country that day by controlling that game from pretty much start to finish against Alabama. You had some really fun runs in that game. A couple of big shots from Tahad Pettiford. It was an exciting day for Auburn fans. So even though Auburn didn't win the SEC that day, they won it later in the trip to Lexington. I put that game at number 3 because of the rivalry and because of how big of a deal it was for Auburn to get that win in Tuscaloosa. At number 2, I put Auburn baseball sweep of the regional this year to make it to the Super Regionals. Auburn defeated Central Connecticut State, defeated, I believe, yes, it was NC State was the game too. I'm forgetting. And then Stetson. I believe that was the correct order. It may have been Stetson and then NC State. I apologize. I messed up the order. But nonetheless, Auburn swept that regional. Auburn baseball had a really fun regional. Bub Terrell was incredible. Ike Irish was incredible. Cooper McMurray. It was just a really fun weekend at Plainsman Park. Again, that was just a few weeks ago. I got to be there in person for all of that. That was a lot of fun for me, a fun experience. And it added to what was a fantastic year for Auburn baseball, riding the ship, getting Auburn baseball back to national prominence, and playing at the highest level of collegiate baseball. So this was a top moment for me. That's why I put it at number 2. Auburn baseball, Auburn basketball carried Auburn athletics this year, and Auburn baseball had a really great time, and that was a really great weekend. Unfortunately, Auburn would fall in the Super Regionals to Coastal Carolina, who would go on to the College World Series Championship Series before losing to LSU. And then at number 1, you all know what this is going to be. The Elite Eight game that Auburn won against Michigan State to advance to the Final Four. The iconic moment where Johni Broome goes out with an injury, ends up coming back, making the 3. Auburn wins this game against Michigan State. One of the greatest moments in Auburn athletics history. Johni Broome coming back from injury and knocking down that 3 was an incredible moment in Auburn basketball and Auburn history overall. Such an exciting game. The way the emotional swing of seeing Johni Broome leave injured and then coming back into that game and then playing the way he did to finish that game off, man. And then the party at Toomer's after, of course, with all the fans. I got to go down and be a part of that at Toomer's Corner. You couldn't even move around. Insanely packed. The celebration that took place. A lot of fun. Another great day in Auburn athletics for this past year. What was that Elite Eight victory? And again, Auburn basketball gave us most of 3 out of the 5, I think, on my list were Auburn basketball days. They carried the water this year for sure for Auburn athletics, and certainly have to be thankful to Bruce Pearl and Auburn basketball for that. So those were the top 5 moments. There were a couple others I considered. Of course, track and field had won a national championship in 4x100 relay and in hurdles. So those were certainly a couple honorable mentions. Auburn softball had a really fantastic 7-run comeback, walk-off win against NC State, I believe it was. That was a really cool moment. And a few others. Golf had a really good year, but I was trying to pick out specific moments, not necessarily seasons as a whole. So that's why I went with those 5 for this list. Okay, to close out today's show, I want to address my trip to Philadelphia. So, born and raised in Montgomery, Alabama, technically still the heart of Braves country. My grandfather's a big Braves fan. My dad, my brother are Cubs fans. But I wanted to be a contrarian. I went with the Phillies. I chose the Phillies as my favorite team when I was a little boy. Yes, they were good at the time when I chose them, 2008 with that range. They won the World Series in 2008. We're in it again in 2009. Things started to go downhill quickly after that, and the Phillies kind of settled into irrelevance there for about a decade. But I didn't lose my passion. I've been a Phillies fan my whole life, even through the struggles. And now the last several years, Phillies have been really good again, and that's been exciting for me. But you don't care about that, this Auburn show, but just wanted to give you some background. So anyways, to say all that, I went to Philadelphia. My dad and I went to Philadelphia. It was my graduation trip. I graduated from college. Went up there to watch a couple games. Great experience. A lot of fun. I'm certainly so grateful that I had the opportunity to do that and got to do that trip with my dad. Very thankful for that. But while we were up there, I had a few questions about, well, what was it like, of course, being in the South, but how does Philadelphia, compare to Auburn fans? How do Philly fans compare to Auburn fans? If you know anything about Philly fans, they get a bad rap for being pretty brutal, pretty rough fan base, hard on their own players, and it's completely true. They are as supportive as it comes when you're successful, and they are about as tough and as rough and mean as it comes when you're not successful. They're going to let you know. They're going to boo when things aren't going well. They have zero patience for poor play. Zero. So in that way, Philly fans are a little bit tougher, I would say, than Auburn fans. Where I would say the similarities lie is in the passion. Philly fans are just as passionate, even though it's about pro sports versus college sports for Auburn fans. They are just as bit of passion about their sports teams, whether it's the Phillies or it's the Eagles or the 76ers, whatever it might be in Philly. They are every bit as passionate as Auburn fans are about Auburn sports. And the difference to me that I've been able to notice and finally getting to go to the city is that Auburn fans are just a little bit nicer about it. Yes, Auburn fans can be brutal when Auburn is struggling, but Auburn overall is not quite as mean to their players. Auburn fans have been. They can be, but there's a little bit more of a, I guess you would call it, Southern manners to Auburn fans that you just don't have in Philly fans. So that would be the biggest difference. I don't think Auburn fans are quite as ruthless or as quite as brutal as Philly fans, but there are more similarities than you might imagine. You might not think people in the North are as passionate about sports as we are here in the South, and it's true they're not about college football as we are, but they are about their team as Auburn fans are about Auburn. So there are similarities there, and I really enjoyed getting to go to Philadelphia and to get to experience that this past weekend. Certainly grateful for that trip. Well, before we get out of here, I don't have much time because I am on my lunch break and I do have to get back up to work, but I have to address this. I forgot about it, maybe intentionally, maybe not. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. I was wrong. I was wrong about Auburn recruiting. I'm not changing everything I said last week, but I do want to say that I was wrong in saying that I had no concern. There's reason to be concerned about Auburn recruiting. Am I panicking? No. Concern and panic are two different things. Panic is Auburn recruiting has no chance to recover. Concern is it has a chance to recover, but Auburn has dug a hole. And as we've been recording this show, Auburn lost yet another commit. Auburn, as far as last I know, is down to 5 commits now. Before this show started, Auburn was 62 in recruiting rankings according to 24/7 Sports. They've just lost another commit, so I don't know where they're at now. I assume and hope they're still in the top 100, but things are bad. Things are really, really bad for Auburn recruiting right now. And look, I know all the counterpoints to that well, this is only June, Carson, and you still got the whole season to play. Signing day is not till December. Everyone flips. I get that, and a lot of those arguments are based in good faith, and there is some truth to them. However, still the majority of guys who commit to you don't flip. There are a good many that do, and it is higher than it used to be. But if you were stealing this from famous college football podcaster Josh Pate, if you were to pay $100 for every guy who commits and stays committed, and another guy was to pay $100 for every guy who's committed and flips, the guy who got the $100 for every guy who was committed and stayed committed would win out. He would make more money. So more guys stay committed than flip. So with all that being said, Auburn losing guys and then having to try to flip a bunch of guys come signing day is not the position you want to be in. You much rather be in the position of trying to keep the players you have committed versus trying to flip other guys. Unfortunately for Auburn, that doesn't look like it's going to be the case this season. It looks like Auburn is going to have to dig themselves out of a hole and flip a lot of guys. Every single trend that we saw the last 2 years with Auburn being a top 10 recruiting class, having a top 10 recruiting class the last 2 years has gone out the window. Right now, Auburn only has one top 10 player in the state of Alabama committed. Auburn had 8 of the top 10 players last year from the state of Alabama that signed with them. We know that Hugh Freeze prioritizes the state of Alabama. He hasn't had any success. He's losing guys to Texas, losing guys to Georgia, Bama, Florida. Those are top programs in college football, just like Auburn is. You can understand that, but what you don't want to have happen is those teams coming into your state, Alabama, of course, is in the state, but having Florida, Georgia, and Texas come into the state of Alabama and pulling your top players out, that's what you can't have happen. If you lose a guy to Texas, to Georgia, to Florida that are not in the state of Alabama, that's one thing. But when you're losing guys that are in the state to those other programs, that can't happen. That absolutely cannot happen. And so I know there's a lot of frustration, a lot of criticism towards Hugh Freeze about this. I get that. I understand it. And certainly, he's the head coach. All the blame ultimately falls on him. However, this Auburn staff didn't just forget how to recruit all of a sudden. This staff can still recruit. They still know how to do that. And that's why there's more to this story than we know right now. I talked a little bit about it on last week's show, and that's what I'm not going to change. I still believe the issue here is Auburn's handling of money. That's the only explanation that makes sense to me, is that something financially is not right with Auburn. Auburn's not lacking in money. The money is there. Auburn just hasn't figured out yet with the House settlement, I believe, how to utilize these deals, how to pay players without getting in trouble, how to balance their revenue sharing. But this would be my advice to Auburn. You better figure it out, because perception is reality, and perception right now is Auburn's in trouble, and Auburn is a mess. I don't think that is accurate, but that is the reality, and the Auburn fan base is frustrated, and the season isn't even here yet. Auburn hasn't even lost a football game yet, and so you have a poor recruiting class going into year 3, coming off a 5-7 season. You see the picture I'm painting for you here, even if that's not a fair picture, and I don't necessarily think it tells the whole story. But that's going to be the picture from the outside looking in. That's going to be the narrative around Auburn come August 29th if Auburn can't start to build some momentum off the field. Because you can't control anything on the field yet. But you can control what's going on in recruiting, and right now, that's not going well for Auburn. Okay, but I've got to wrap it up. I'll have more on that, I'm sure, in the coming weeks on this show, and I'll try to break it down a little bit more. But I've got to get back to work. Thank you all so much for continuing to watch or listening to Talkin Tumors. I really appreciate it. If you haven't already, please ask for you like and subscribe to the show. I know it can be a slower time during the summer, so I know that those who are listening and watching are true followers of the show and enjoy the content, and that really does mean the world to me. So thank you very much, and we will be back with another edition of Talkin Tumors next week. Thank you for listening to Talkin Tumors. If you liked what you heard, make sure to subscribe and follow @Talkin Tumors on social media so you'll never miss an episode. War Eagle.